If you like Star Trek and Star Wars and you like ship battles, you'll like this channel. And if you like what you see, please subscribe and make a comment. It helps. It really does. And with that being said, let's get started. Alright, so this is part 2 of Show Me the Power. We're discussing the power scales of ships. So do you remember the first time we seen the Vulture class cruiser for the Klingon Empire that had the Chancellor on board, and it was being escorted by 2 Kavort class birds of prey to the Enterprise? Do you remember that? Okay, so remember we saw the Kavort. So when you take it a comparisons to the Vulture class cruiser, however you want to say it. So one of the things that right off the bat is its shields are significantly stronger by quite a bit. So 1,798,000. So that's slightly higher than the Galaxy class starship. Its hull value is not anywhere close to the Enterprise though. It's only at 860,769. And so it gives it an overall defense of 2,658,769. So when you compare that to its counterpart, the Kavort, you look at it and there's not that big of a difference. Like when it comes to the defense or the defenses, it's the offenses is what really counts though with the Vulture class cruiser. So that thing has something like 18 disruptors and it's either 3 or 4 torpedo tubes. I can't remember, but anyways, it's significantly a lot more firepower than its predecessors, the Kavort. And how I determined the shields is based on TNG when it was being attacked by the Kavort. You know, when the Chancellor died, and then you're trying to see the new Klingon leader, and Galron is being attacked, and Worf is on the ship. So that's how we figured out what the shields were. And then the hull value is actually based on some data that we got from the Dominion War in DS9. And then I had some formulas that were showing some of the ship strength. It was based on that, and that's kind of where that came from. So the shields is what the ship has, but the hull value, that could be slightly off. That was we had to use some formulas to try to acquire that information. So I just wanted to know that could be off by maybe like a little bit. But the hull value for the Kavort, we got that from when it put its shields down and tried to get on board. So the forward-facing disruptor on this ship is able to deliver 520 terawatts of power. And so that's the same hull value as the Kavort. So the Kavort, this ship's hull value is better, basically. And then when you compare it to the Enterprise, they're pretty close. I mean, 800, it's off by, around 300,000, which, is a decent amount. But so the Vulture class cruiser is also quite a bit smaller than the Enterprise. As far as its mass, it's like, I think it's like almost half. But when you look at this data, what this is telling you is the Vulture class cruiser has got a very heavily armored hull. I mean, it is smaller and it weighs quite a bit less, so it's got to be made from stronger materials than the Enterprise D. One of the best standoffs in all of Star Trek was when the Enterprise ran into 2 Romulan warbirds. And then, when you think things are at its worst, the Klingons come to the rescue. Do you remember this? I do. Alright, so if we take a look at what's going on here, so we see the Enterprise D. We know a lot about the Kavort, but this is what the warbird is. And so I threw a little something extra in there. I put their attack value as well. So the shields are 1,560,000, and the hull is 2,145,000. So the Romulan warbird hull is almost twice as strong as the Enterprise. Now, there's some weird discrepancies about this that I just have to throw out there. Is the warbird is way larger than the Enterprise. Like, it's almost 3 times its size. But it says that its mass is equal to a Galaxy class starship, which is like 4 million tons. So it has a mass of 4 million. So when you think about that, I'm like, either it's wrong, which is a possibility, and they just kind of made a mistake, or the Romulans are using some kind of ultra thin, ultra tough material, I guess. I'm not really sure why it is, because I know that they say the Romulan warbird is well armored, and we've seen data say that. So I don't know, but I mean, when you think about it, when it's 3 times the size of a Galaxy class, we're talking about the volume of the ship all the way around, and a lot of people think that the hull, the opening in the warbird, there's just not no. If you take the head, I mean, you gotta understand the Galaxy class starship, the top part of the warbird is almost equivalent to a Galaxy class starship. Then there's the bottom part, and then the head itself is around the same size as the not the saucer, but the bottom half of the Enterprise. So, yeah, I don't really know what to make of this. I just kind of go with it. As far as like a head cannon, I honestly think that this ship is its mass is absolutely wrong. I think the mass of the ship should be 3 times that of the Galaxy class, but since the books say otherwise, I have to kind of try to make something up with it. And so, how I visualize it is that the Romulans are using some kind of state of the art armor that is extremely lightweight, and that's how they're able to deliver the ship. So, this ship, no matter what, is 3 times the size of the Galaxy class starship, but the armor they're using is ultra light. So there you go. So that's some advanced Romulan technology. And then when you look at compare the hull value, I mean, obviously it's twice that, and the shields are slightly weaker. The shields are actually based off what we see during the Dominion War. So, and I don't think the Romulan warbird was really upgraded that much to the actual war with the Dominion, and then the hull value is coming directly from when the warbird got blown up when Odo was on it. So that's exactly correct. And then the shields are pretty accurate. They may be slightly off. It's based off whatever power levels you think the beam weapon platforms on Cardassia. But, we're taking out the warbirds, and based on the damage and when the shields went down and all that stuff is how that came about. And then the shields on the Enterprise, those are based off Romulan disruptor hits, and it got hit 8 times. It said it was down by 80%. So obviously 10 shots, and then 10 shots would be 1,755,000. That's it. And then obviously the hull from the Enterprise is from when there's a couple incidents where you see a Galaxy class being destroyed. There's when the Klingons attacked it, and then there's also one of the ships gets taken out by the Dominion, and we get to see that data, and so we have a guess of what the hull value is, or at least a decent estimation. And some bonus information is the weapon points of each ship. So the Enterprise has 14 phasers, 2 torpedo banks. So you get a percentile for each phaser and the torpedo bank. And then there's 6 disruptors on the Romulan warbird. And then there's 2 Photon torpedoes. And then on the K-Vort, there are 4 disruptors and then 2 torpedoes. So that's where the attack scale is coming from. It does not show you the consistency of the weapons, like can they fire 10 times, can they fire 7 times, it doesn't show that. It's only the weapon points. So this is showing you that there are more weapons on the Enterprise than there are any of the other ships. And even though the Romulan warbird weapons are way more stronger than the standard Galaxy class Type X phaser, the Enterprise has so many phasers on it that it's technically outguns the Romulan warbird. and then the Volca class cruiser. This one's kind of deceptive, because it's got a third of the firepower, because it's only got 4 disruptors and then 2 torpedoes, which it really isn't that much firepower. But when you take in consideration how fast Klingon disruptors can shoot, there's a big difference in the power scaling. But so if you can see so when you see this is why the Romulans did not try to take on this fight, is they were heavily outmatched. I mean, yes, those ships are tough. They could take a pretty good beating, but if you look at an overall battle scaling, they were very close, and the Romulans don't like close. They like a guarantee. Okay, so this is the most advanced warship the Cardassians have. It's the Type 3 Galore class, and it's being attacked by 2 birds of prey. And this has had the Obsidian, or the Decopal Council, or the Council. I don't know how to say their name, but anyways, this is the ship that they were on, and that the Defiant came and rescued them. So you can see that the shields on this ship are surprisingly strong at 1,733,333. That's really, really strong shields. And the hull is pretty darn strong at 1,235,000. That's really good. And the reason why it's really, really good is when you look at the ratio of mass compared to this ship's mass, or this ship's defensive capability, how much damage it can take, is equivalent to a Galaxy-class starship, which is literally twice, or no, it's more than that. It's like 2.5 times larger as far as mass-wise goes. But anyways, this ship has got really, really strong armor. The only thing about this is it's deceptive. Because you think, wow, well, this ship is, it's pretty close in defensive capabilities. Like, why can't they take on, a Galaxy class or something of that nature? No, they can't. The weaponry on the Cardassians is terrible. This ship's spiral wave disruptor cannons, they're weak. They're really, really, really weak compared to the other races. And then their heavy spiral wave disruptor cannon is the only weapon that is good. And it's only equivalent to a Galaxy class Type X phaser. So they only have one weapon on that ship that's really worth the crap, and the rest is garbage. So that's why a ship as powerful as this could be beat down by birds of prey. It's because the bird of prey are just avoiding the front weapons on the Galore, and they're just slowly picking it down. And those spiral wave disruptor cannons aren't very strong, and they're not going to do a whole lot against the bird of prey. I mean, they're going to be able to take down those shields rather quickly and then start damaging those weapon platforms quickly, and then the ship is just going to not be able to do a whole lot. Now, there is one other thing to mention. When the Enterprise first runs into a Galore class, the shields on a Galore Type 1, which is the first Galore that we ever see in TNG, the shields on that ship are 260,000. And then the shields that we see on the ships that are fighting in the Dominion War, they are also using the 260,000. Almost all Galore class starships have a shield of 260,000, which is around the same shield technology level as what you would seen during the Kirk era. So the shields on the Cardassians are terrible. How I got this number though is there's another variant of the Galore which has just got a module on it, which is the Kelton class. The shields on that are actually the shields that I used here, and the reason I did that is because when 2 Galore Type 3s came across the Enterprise in TNG, Riker said that those were state-of-the-art and actually felt like those ships could give them, could be dangerous to the Enterprise, the 2 of them. And if they were Type 1s or Type 2s with the 260,000, the Enterprise would never have reacted that way. They would have reacted the same way they did with the first encounter. They would just really took it serious. But you can see there's a total different attitude change when they're dealing with the Galore Type 3. And they said that Galore Type 3 was state-of-the-art. So it would have been using the same weapons or the same modules that the new ships that were built by the Obsidian Order with the Romulans and the Cardassians working together, they would have used this. So this is what the Type 3 is. All right, and so the next thing to do is we're going to talk about the Type 1, the Type 2. So this is a Type 3. That is a Type 2 or Type 1. And that's the data that I used to get it. And then this is the actual data just broken down, and we'll talk about this. So to keep it really simple, when you're taking a look at this data, you can see that the Type 1 and Type 2 shields are really weak. They're around the same shields that you would be seeing on ships during the Kirk era, which is really poor when you're thinking about what ships are now. The hull is really strong, which has obviously been done to try to compensate for the poor shields. So the Cardassians are completely reliant on their first generations of Galor 1s and 2s on the armor factor keeping them alive and afloat in battle. Now the newer generations, the Galor 3s, the Kelton classes, are obviously not worried about that, and they're using modern shields. Now, a data point that's in some of my older videos is you'll see that it has an armor of 1.64. So to give you an idea, the Defiant is like 0.1. The Enterprise is 4.0. So the higher up the number is, and I know this is hard to understand, that is the weaker the armor, because it's based on a ratio looking at the mass to how much damage they can take. So the armor level of 1.64, it means that this armor is almost double that of what the Galaxy class is. So if you were to shrink the Galaxy to the same size as this ship would have twice the defense of that Galaxy miniature. So that's basically how you look at it. So just think, when you look at armor, the lower the number, the less of the ship is not armored. I don't have the data in front of me, but I do remember the bug ship, and then the Defiant is like 0.2 or 0.5. A lot of the Klingon ships are like 1.5 or 1.2. Most Federation ships in the Kirk era are 2.6, I think is what the standard, or 2.3. And then obviously Cardassians are 1.6. And then in the TNG generation, most Federation starships, which are in TNG, are in the category of 4. So they're 4.0 or 3.6, something around those lines. And then there is the 1.5 is what we see with the Akira and things like that. So that tells you, as the generations went on, they had really high armored ships, or they had high armor, and then they went to basically no armor, and then they went back to having ships with high armor again. So basically that's how that works. Some of the things that are really interesting about this is, no matter what the data table said, that's what I went with. And, over the year when I was doing this, I honestly was surprised that the Warbird wasn't stronger than what it is. Because the Warbird's so big, and it was like this big scary thing. It was like it was the #1 villain in TNG. And then when I look at that and I compare it to the Enterprise wasn't that far off. So I don't think the Warbird is as dangerous as I imagined it in my head. Yeah, it's big, but when you look at the mass and then you look at the hull, how big that ship was, I would expect it to have been, more powerful. But then that makes sense. It got hammered pretty good in the TNG, and it makes a lot more sense, after that. But then with the Galor, when I found out, because I just had this idea that the Cardassians were just complete and utter garbage, like just complete trash is how I viewed them. And then when I seen how powerful the hull was of the Galor, that surprised me, because it's superior than the Federation by a lot. And the actual Galor Type 3 is a decent and powerful ship. I mean, that really surprised me when I realized that they had, shields which were stronger than the Romulans, stronger than the Federation, and stronger than even the Klingons. Was kind of like a weird thing, a weird kind of fluke, and it is what it is. And then the K-Vort I don't know, the K-Vork ship, the I don't know, the bird of prey is like that little tiny thing, and then this thing is like so big. I just kind of thought like it was gonna have like a stronger hull than what it had, in my mind, because the Klingons, and I mean it is a decent hull, but I was expecting like something like the Cardassians, like a crazy amount of armor, and that really wasn't the case. Their ships were more reliant on shields than armor, which was kind of like not what I had in my head. Like the canon that I created in my head did not match up. So I'm just kind of curious. Is there anything that you guys seen with these data tables that surprised you that you weren't expecting? Oh, the Romulan warbirds. Like I think it's 177,000 per shot from a Romulan disruptor. A Klingon disruptor is 32,500. A heavy disruptor from the Volk class cruiser is 520,000. Type X phaser is 65,000. Galor spiral wave cannon is also 65,000. Kind of give you like a weird like numbers with the weapons. So I hope you guys enjoyed. This was really fun and really interesting. I enjoyed like learning all this, and I hope you guys enjoy.